And last but not least, we have, for a technological roll of 6, we have a choice of facilities, either a military base or a naval port, or a player can choose between any of the preceding techs. So basically, a roll of a 6 is a wild card for. It's literally it's the best thing you can roll. It's the world is your oyster basically. If you happen to roll a 6. So what military bases and naval ports do is they add areas where you can mobilize select units. So just to kind of go over the Kings and Kaisers map a little bit, basically there's 3 kinds of cities. You have capital cities. Hold on 1 second, let's see. You have capital cities, which for the original power can mobilize an unlimited amount of land and or air units. You have major cities, which any power that controls those territories can mobilize the IPC value of units. And also if with capital cities, if somebody else ends up controlling the capital city, then they can mobilize the IPC value as well. Basically it becomes like a controlled major city as well. And then you have minor cities, and minor cities have no mobilization capabilities. They just contribute to the minor city victory points. But major cities and major cities and capital cities have that mobilization points. Now, territories with naval bases, they can mobilize an unlimited amount of sea units into their respective adjacent sea zone. So, Italy has a naval base in Lazio, and it also they have the capital of Rome there as well. So they can mobilize an unlimited amount of land units, at least whatever they can afford in Rome, and they can mobilize units into this sea units into this sea zone. And Austria-Hungary can mobilize units into this sea zone. If you end up controlling another territory with a naval base, if you end up controlling somebody else's naval base, then you can only mobilize the IPC value of units. So if somebody else controls province, they can mobilize 2 sea units into Sea Zone 27 right there. So fun stuff. And the same thing also with like Lazio. If Austria-Hungary came down here and controlled Rome, they could mobilize a total of 3 units out of Lazio, basically, whether they're land units or they're sea units, any combination of that, basically. All right. Only the original controlling power can mobilize unlimited, essentially. Okay. And you can mobilize the original controlling power if the territory with a major city, like say Lorraine, if at the beginning of the turn France contests Lorraine with Germany, right? There's the major city of Verdun there. Then France can mobilize 2 units in Lorraine, even though it's contested, but it's an original French territory, so they can. But Germany cannot mobilize units there unless they control that, okay? Kind of like a little important precursor. So, military bases. Let's see. Essentially, military bases and naval ports are a further step down from major cities and naval bases, okay? So, a military base can only mobilize a maximum of 3 units, of 3 land units, and they can't mobilize air units, and they can only mobilize either infantry, cavalry, or trucks. Naval ports, on the other hand, can mobilize transports, submarines, cruisers. They cannot mobilize dreadnoughts, but one dreadnought per power may be repaired at a friendly naval port. So if, say, a damaged French dreadnought ends up down here on their turn, provided Britain control, or somehow the Allies control South Africa, that naval port can repair this dreadnought on France's turn, okay? But they cannot mobilize a dreadnought. They can just repair them, and they can only repair, once, one at a time, basically, okay? Military bases can mobilize a total of 3 units. Naval ports can mobilize a total of 2 units. And the IPC value is reflective or affected by the IPC value. The number of units mobilized is reflected by the IPC value of the territory wherever you place it. And this is the only field tech that has this stipulation. If you get these via field technology, you can via field technological achievements, you can only place them in your power's original territories. So that means like, Germany, if Germany ends up down in Aquitaine, they can't put a military base in Aquitaine because it doesn't make any sense that Germans are going to sprout up out of Aquitaine. It would just be French people, But that does extend down to like the original colonial territories down here in Africa. And as you see, Germany starts with a military base in German East Africa. And Britain starts with a military base in Egypt, and they start with a naval port in South Africa. Britain also starts with a naval port here in New South Wales, in Sydney. So, further restrictions. You cannot put a military base in a territory that already has a major city because you can already build land units there and stuff. Major cities can also have that ability to mobilize other types of land units and air units. Military bases cannot mobilize air units. Naval ports, on the other hand, a little bit of a leeway. You can put those in territories such as South Africa. You can put those in territories that have a major city because those territories do not have mobilization of, they do not start with mobilization capability of sea units. But you cannot put those in territories that already have a naval base. So Austria-Hungary can put a military base in Dalmatia, which is probably realistically for them the best spot for them to put a military base. One of the best spots, I would say. They can put one in Dalmatia, but they cannot put a naval port here because they already have a naval base in that territory into that sea zone. If you want to place it like a naval port in a territory that is adjacent to multiple sea zones, such as Canada here, Britain, if they got one, they would have to choose. They'd have to select which sea zone that they're going to be mobilizing into. So they would have to put the naval port you put on the edge, similar to how a naval base is represented on the map. So you'd have to choose and be clear as to what sea zone it's going into. Same with India. So West India has the major city of Bombay, and it can mobilize 4 units there. You can add a naval port here, but you also have to be specific. It's probably going to go on this side, but you would have to be technically specific as to which coast it is going into, because they're separate sea zones. All right. Now here's the other further caveat with this kind of situation. A naval port can mobilize a maximum of 2 units at a time. You already have a major city in this territory, right? So the number of IPCs is the maximum amount of units that can be mobilized out of this territory. So you can't build 4 land units in West India and 2 sea units into Sea Zone 41. The maximum amount of units of a combo basically would be you could mobilize 2 sea units into Sea Zone 41 and 2 land units out of Bombay and West India. Make sense? Or you could do 3 land units and 1 sea unit, but you cannot do 2 and 4. You'd have to do the maximum amount that would be mobilized within this territory or out of this territory is 4. The maximum amount of units down here in South Africa, out of Cape Town, we got the major city of Cape Town, is 2. So you can mobilize 1 land unit, 1 sea unit, 2 sea units, 2 land units. So If Germany's doing things right, they are putting a lot of pressure on Britain, and for the most part, because they have to be mobilizing, sometimes I have a habit of saying spawning, they have to be mobilizing 2 units a turn. They're trying to pump out as many land units in Africa as much as possible. So in a lot of games I've played, even though they have this Britain has this naval port down here, they're almost never able to mobilize sea units here unless they finally make some headway in Africa and the Middle East, and they are able to safely do that. So tip for the Central Powers, put pressure on Britain so that they're tied up and can't do that. In Egypt up here, they start with a military base. So Egypt is worth 2. Again, maximum amount of land units of infantry, cavalry, trucks, or any combination thereof would be 2. If they got a naval port, they would have to be, and wanted it in Egypt, they would have to be specific as to which coast they are putting it on. Ideally, probably this one, so they can start landing up here. But anyway, there you go. So, what else? Oh yeah, like I said, there's a cap of total number of units. So also, if say Austria-Hungary got a military base and they placed it in Dalmatia, Dalmatia is worth 4 IPCs, but the maximum amount of units a military base can mobilize is 3. So they cannot mobilize any more per turn than 3 units in Dalmatia. Hungary, by comparison, is worth 6. If they put one there, they would be able to mobilize a maximum of 3 units in Hungary. Now, on the flip side, if Russia decided to have a military base, but for some reason they put one in Volga, it's only worth 1. You can only put 1 land unit, one of the select land units per turn in Volga. Okay. All right. So, yeah, that basically more or less covers it. Let me quadruple check my little reference cards here. Very, very helpful. Yeah, you have to place them in original territories. And you also, very important, you can't build out of them. You cannot mobilize units out of these until the following round of placement. So if you put one down, it's the next, much like an industrial complex in BBR, or other Axis Analyzed games, you can't build out of them until the next round. Okay. Let's see. And if their capital, if their territory is contested, if say, the Turks manage to come down here and contest Egypt on Britain's turn, this is contested, they cannot mobilize out of this territory. Now, if there was a major city, if Cairo was a major city, they would be able to mobilize out of there if it was contested at the start of their turn. But it is a military base, which is essentially weaker than a major city. So they would not be able to mobilize out of there until Egypt is no longer contested at the start of their turn. So there's that. And if Egypt is captured, the military base would be destroyed. Same thing with Germany, East Africa. Same thing with South Africa. So if Germany goes right out the gate and attacks and gets 2 hits, and Britain does not get 2 hits, not only do they capture South Africa, but they destroy that naval port. Okay, just as an example. Let's see. What else? Okay. Let's see. And if you capture a power's capital, all of that power's any active facilities they have on the board, military bases, naval ports, they're all removed from play. If you manage to capture that power's capital, essentially the power goes into chaos and starts collapsing in a sense. They can't mobilize anymore, and their facilities essentially kind of collapse. Let's see what else here. Oh yeah, they cannot rail units. So major cities and minor cities, major cities and capital cities can rail the IPC value of land units 2 spaces away. So Brandenburg has Berlin, the capital of Berlin, and it's worth 8 IPCs. It's probably the highest, I believe it's the highest value IPC value on the board for a territory. So they can rail 8 units away. Bavaria with Munich can rail 3 units away. Military bases and naval ports have no rail production, no rail ability, no integrated railways whatsoever. So they do not provide that boost. They do not provide that movement boost. Additionally, naval ports, unlike naval bases, do not provide any naval mines. So they do, no naval mines. No naval mines. So none of that. So there won't be mines being rolled down here off the coast of Africa right there. Additionally, military bases and naval ports can actually be purchased because this this can tie into your strategy. If you really want them and you don't want to have to roll 6, you can purchase them, but they're a lot more expensive. So military bases cost 15 IPCs, naval ports can cost 20. While that sounds like it stings, the offset of that, which kind of can make it more enticing a little bit to drop all that cheddar, is that you get to place them in territories that are aligned to your power. So Austria-Hungary, if they get a naval port via field technology or a military base, or they roll 6, they can't select a naval port because they already have a naval base, and this is the only coastline they start with, and they can't put a naval base in Romania or any of these territories because they're not original territories. Bulgaria, they can't place one there. It's aligned to them, but they cannot place it there if they get it via tech. However, if they purchase it, then they can place one there. They would have to pick which coastline, but they would be able to place a naval port in Bulgaria if they buy it. And then Germany, by comparison, if they align Chile and purchase a naval port on their following turn, they can place it on their following turn. They can buy, after mobilizing Chile, they can purchase a naval port and place one there. And, depending on which coast, and then they can start mobilizing sea units or a military base and mobilize some select land units in Chile as well to keep this distraction pumping. Mobilizing cruisers out of Chile would actually be kind of cool, but they can do it that way. It costs a lot, and you got to plan it out and do it just right, All right, and I think that about covers it. Let's see. Just double checking this. Yeah, that basically is it. So military bases can mobilize infantry, and then the units that have towing capabilities, cavalry or trucks. Sea naval ports can mobilize transports, subs, cruisers, and they can repair dreadnoughts one at a time. Or they can be purchased. So that's basically it. A little bit of a lengthy one, but necessary to clarify with a few things what you can do with a military base or a naval port. And again, they get destroyed if you capture the territory with them. If you contest the territory, if the territory is contested at the start of their power's turn, then they cannot mobilize with them. They have to control the territory in order to mobilize with them. So there you go. That concludes the base game field technology that there is to play with for Kings and Kaisers. So it was fun recording these videos. Stay tuned for whatever I do next. I might do another video just going over America's ability to share field, or not share, but supply field technology that while they're neutral. But I also might just do another video just going over America's special rules, and Germany might have a video. I might make a video where Germany has special rules, going over Germany's special rules. Might make a video going over Russia's special rules, which there's not like a lot of, but they're worth addressing. Anyway, stay tuned for later, and have fun.